fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Happy Friday and welcome to Firstpost America. We're live in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. I'm Eric Ham, and over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But first, let's take a look at the latest headlines. Ukraine plants its flag by opening a military office in the occupied part of Russia's Kursk region. President Volodymyr Zelensky says his troops advanced almost 2 miles deeper into Russia in the last 24 hours. Saber rattling continues in the Middle East as the Yemen-based Houthis threaten to launch a major attack on Israel, calling it their moral obligation. The Iran-backed group blames Israel for the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran on July 31st. Former President Donald Trump goes beyond the usual name-calling of his Democratic opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris. The Republican says the Harris campaign's economic policies are similar to those of Venezuelan strongman President Nicolas Maduro. Over 1 million doctors in India to go on strike nationwide this Saturday in protest over the brutal rape and murder of a doctor in the eastern city of Kolkata. And North Korea to reopen its borders for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. Pyongyang says tourists will only be allowed to visit Samjeon, a city located in the country's northern mountains. We begin in the United States. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris held a joint event in Largo, Maryland on Thursday. They appeared together for the first time since the commander-in-chief was replaced by Harris as the Democratic presidential nominee last month. Speaking in the Democratic stronghold, President Biden endorsed Kamala Harris once again and brought the crowd to its feet multiple times.
Folks, I have an incredible partner. The progress we made. She's going to make one hell of a president.
The event celebrated the Biden administration's new deal to reduce the cost of 10 widely used prescription drugs by as much as 79% starting in the year 2026. The move is expected to provide financial relief to millions of Americans and ease frustration over high prices ahead of the November election.
Why are prescription drugs so expensive? I will tell you. Well, one big reason is for years, Big Pharma has often inflated the price of life-saving medications, often charging many times what it would cost to make just to increase their profits. And millions of Americans have suffered as a result.
The newly announced deal is part of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed by Kamala Harris's tie-breaking vote in the U.S. Senate. The law allows for the drug price negotiations to benefit 66 million Americans, which no Republican supported.
Not a single Republican voted for this bill, period. Not one in the entire Congress. Now, the reason I say it is not to make a political point about them, not if they've gotten their lesson, but guess what? They want to, the guy we're running against, what's his name? Donald Dump or Donald, whatever. They want to get rid of this, what we passed. They're fighting to get rid of what we've just passed. No, I'm serious. No help from Republicans passing the Inflation Reduction Act thanks to the tie-breaking vote of Kamala made it possible.
Now, the event comes a day after a Labor Department report showed inflation rates in July had dropped below 3% for the first time in 3 years. President Biden said his policies to lower costs were proving to be effective.
Yes. I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start right in that way, okay?
Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump attacked the Biden administration's economic record on the very same day. During a press conference at his New Jersey golf club, the former president also tried to blunt the Harris campaign's momentum.
Harris has just declared that tackling inflation will be a day one priority for her. It's going to be day one. But day one, really, for Kamala was 3.5 years ago. Where has she been?
Now, the ex-president went on to say that he's very angry with Kamala Harris and is entitled to launch personal attacks on her.
I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence, and I think she'll be a terrible president. She certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. It was just a soundbite, and she called JD and I weird. He's not weird. He was a great student at Yale.
Now, polls are showing that Americans actually prefer Kamala Harris over Donald Trump to handle the U.S. economy. And with the new achievement in healthcare and inflation going down, it seems like Kamala Harris is living up to voter expectations. And moving to South America's election crisis, President Joe Biden has thrown his support behind the idea of fresh polls in Venezuela, following a suggestion first floated by Brazilian President Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva. The United States and Brazil refused to accept the contested July 28th presidential election results, where both Nicolas Maduro and the opposition both claimed victory. When President Biden was asked if he supported President Lula's idea, he responded with a simple, "I do." However, the White House later clarified that President Biden was criticizing Maduro's lack of transparency rather than fully endorsing a new election. Now, amid growing international pressure, Venezuela's Supreme Court has begun a critical investigation into the election results at the request of Nicolas Maduro. The top court is reviewing dozens of boxes of electoral materials, which comes after protests erupted across the country, with the opposition alleging widespread fraud.
This electoral chamber proceeded to supervise and control the process of expertise of the material that is at the disposal of this judicial instance and in custody of the National Electoral Council consigned by the CNE.
Now, it must be noted, neither Maduro nor the opposition coalition has actually backed the idea of a new vote. Instead, opposition leader Maria Corina Machado argued that the focus should be on holding Maduro accountable for his actions.
In connection to the first proposal, I ask you, we go to a second election, and if they don't like the result, we shall go to a third one, fourth one, fifth one, until Maduro likes the results. Would you accept that if the result is not satisfactory in your countries, you repeat the election? We must make Maduro understand this time is different. Many believe Maduro is saving time until people get tired and turn the page. But this will not happen.
Now, Maduro has fiercely rejected President Biden and Lula's comments, accusing the United States of trying to meddle in Venezuela's affairs. He pointed out that Caracas has never interfered in the elections held in Washington and Brasilia.
I absolutely reject that the United States is trying to become Venezuela's electoral authority or anywhere in the world. They have to review the tremendous problem they have internally. Donald Trump says he will not recognize any result that is adverse to him, and Biden says that if Donald Trump loses, there will be a civil war in the U.S. They have many problems. Let them stay with their problems, because in Venezuela, here in this country, Venezuelans are in charge, simple as that.
Meanwhile, the vast majority of the 277 lawmakers in the single chamber's National Assembly and the Venezuelan military remain loyal to Maduro. So as the Supreme Court continues its investigation, the nation waits anxiously, and it remains to be seen whether the court's findings bring clarity or push Venezuela further into turmoil. And shifting to North America, the United States has faced widespread condemnation and backlash for authorizing the sale of offensive weapons worth $20 billion to Israel this week. And while the scrutiny was largely aimed at Washington for helping Israel in its war in Gaza, attention has now turned to America's northern neighbor, Canada. That's because out of the $20 billion, weapons worth almost $80 million would be manufactured by Canada. Now, human rights groups are saying that Ottawa's decision to participate in the arms deal would be a direct violation of Canadian law. Canada is a signatory to the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, where it ensures that no Canadian weapons are used in suspected human rights violations abroad. However, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government says it would not directly be sending the weapons to Israel, as they would be routed through the United States. Now, Ottawa says it has a mutual defense production sharing agreement with Washington, where Canada has to manufacture weapons for orders received by American defense firms. Meanwhile, anti-war activists have denounced the lack of transparency of this agreement and accused Prime Minister Trudeau's government of exploiting a loophole which would now allow Israel to use offensive weapons in Gaza that are made by Canada. The outrage comes just months after the Canadian Parliament voted 204 to 117 in favor of halting all weapons sales to Israel back in March. However, media reports highlight that the Canadian government's pledge to not send weapons to Israel did not apply to permits worth millions already approved. Now, the Trudeau government had sanctioned almost $29 million worth of permits for military exports to Israel after the war began in October of last year, making it Ottawa's highest recorded weapons deal with Israel in 30 years. The weapons package includes bombs, torpedoes, rockets, artillery ammunition, and explosive devices. Many anti-Israel groups in Canada and the United States are calling out the Trudeau government's hypocrisy when it comes to weapons sales to Israel and are demanding the scrapping of existing permits that would supply Israel with these offensive weapons. The dreaded mpox, which has been ravaging parts of Africa, has now been detected outside the African continent for the first time this year. Sweden and Pakistan have each reported one case in their respective countries. Now, this comes a day after the World Health Organization declared mpox a global public health emergency. The virus was also declared a global threat in 2022. However, this time it's back with a stronger and more dangerous variant. Our next report tells you more about the deadly disease.
Mpox, the disease that wreaked havoc across the world 2 years ago, is back with a more dangerous variant. Known as Mpox clade 1b, the strain is behind a major outbreak in Africa, and now it has been detected for the first time outside the continent. According to Sweden's health agency, a person is now receiving treatment after they reported symptoms of the disease. Officials say the patient was infected while visiting an African country.
We have one person who has sought treatment in the Stockholm region who has been found to have mpox caused by, as we heard, the virus variant clade 1. The case is the first case caused by clade 1 that has been diagnosed outside the African continent. The affected person has also been infected during a stay in an area in Africa where there is a large ongoing outbreak of mpox, clade 1.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has also recorded its first case of the fatal virus, noting that the man returned from Saudi Arabia earlier this month. Both these countries are now testing people who came in contact with the patients. The cases come just a day after the World Health Organization declared mpox as a global public health emergency once again.
Last week, I announced that I was convening an emergency committee under the international health regulations to evaluate the upsurge of mpox in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and other countries in Africa. Today, the emergency committee met and advised me that, in its view, the situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. I have accepted that advice.
The WHO says that about 15 African countries are dealing with the horrors of Mpox. These include Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda and Uganda, which were previously untouched by the outbreak. This time, the Democratic Republic of Congo has been declared as the epicenter of the outbreak, with more than 15,000 cases and over 500 deaths. The viral disease is spreading quickly and is now affecting children as well.
More than 500 people have died from the virus and thousands of people have been infected. This is more than a 160% increase of cases from the same time last year and nearly a 20% increase in the number of deaths. There's more than a dozen countries affected, but Congo has the majority of the cases. It's impacted adults as well as children, and there are a growing number of children than ever before that are being hit by the virus, say health officials.
Formerly known as monkeypox, the zoonotic virus spreads through exposure to infected animals, skin-to-skin contact, or contact with bodily fluids. Mpox symptoms tend to appear 6 to 21 days later and are similar to those of the flu. They include fever, back pain, headache, and muscle aches. But the patients can also get distinctive rashes and painful lesions. In 2022, the previous Mpox version became the first illness after COVID-19 to be declared as a global public health emergency by the WHO. The viral infection earlier affected mostly men who have sex with men, and nearly 100,000 cases and over 200 deaths were reported in 116 countries. Cases in the 2022 outbreak plunged after a campaign to deliver vaccine. However, the virus persisted in parts of Africa and continued to mutate as the distribution of Mpox vaccines was severely delayed in the region.
And we conclude with the latest Hollywood scoop. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, the entertainment industry's favorite power couple, usually win hearts with their banter and charm. But the latest role featuring the actress has sparked off-screen drama. After the release of the movie It Ends With Us, Blake Lively caught flack for turning a serious film about domestic violence into a red carpet fashion parade, leaving fans fuming. So why has America's sweetheart made the sisterhood mad? Here's our final report with answers.
Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have long been America's sweethearts. Their playful banter on social media, the loving family life and red carpet moments have endeared them to millions. Blake's friendship with Taylor Swift and her status as a Met Gala fashion icon have cemented her place as a beloved star in Hollywood. But recently, it seems like things are taking a turn for the worse, and fans are left wondering, why is the internet suddenly gossiping about the Gossip Girl? It all started during the promotional tour for Blake's latest movie, It Ends With Us, a film based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel. In the romance and drama movie, Blake stars alongside Justin Baldoni, who also directed the movie. At first, everything seemed fine. On set, Blake and Justin appeared to be friendly, but soon after, fans noticed something strange. Blake had unfollowed Justin on Instagram. Not just that, the author of the book, Colleen Hoover, had also unfollowed him, and that's when the speculations began. Initially, reports surfaced that Justin had acted unreasonably on set, and the cast, including Blake, were distancing themselves from him. But the story took a twist. Separate interviews given by Justin and Blake painted very different pictures of their working relationship. Justin spoke passionately about the serious themes of the movie, especially domestic violence. Meanwhile, Blake's promotional efforts seemed to focus more on glitz and glamour. Fans even noticed that instead of delving into the movie's heavy themes, Blake was busy promoting her hair products and drinks line. To make matters worse, she brought her husband Ryan Reynolds into the mix, revealing that he had written a pivotal scene for the movie. While some saw this as a fun, supportive gesture, others felt it overshadowed Justin's role as the director. As the online chatter grew, reports emerged that Baldoni had hired a PR crisis manager, fueling rumors that something had indeed gone wrong between the duo. Various reports even speculated that Baldoni retained the services of Melissa Nathan, who also represented Johnny Depp during the Amber Heard trial. Then, just as things couldn't seem to get any worse, a 2016 interview with Blake resurfaced. In the clip, Blake and her co-star Parker Posey are visibly irritated when a journalist congratulates Blake on her baby bump. The interview ends with Parker rolling her eyes and the internet went wild. The old footage, combined with the new drama, painted a picture of Blake that wasn't exactly that of a sweetheart. With tensions high and the public turning against her, one question remains. How will the gossip girl weather this storm? Will she find a way to redeem herself, or has the damage been done?
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you right back here next week. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired!
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the